So last year I did a tour and overview of my barn here behind me, and I got a lot of questions from viewers asking about the cost. And so I thought today would be helpful if I went over some of those rough numbers, especially for folks that are interested in building something perhaps similar to my barn. I know for me it's always interesting to learn from what others have done, and so I hope today's video is helpful. Now, a few disclaimers up front. The first is I am not a general contractor, I'm just a homeowner, although I did serve as the GC while building the barn here. In fact, in the county where I live, they allow homeowners to serve as a GC when you're building your own project, provided that your three main trades, your HVAC, plumbing, and electrical, are all done by licensed professionals. And then they require you to hold on to the property for I think at least 2 years. All that to say, I consider myself a pretty handy guy, but there were parts of the build that I had not done before. And so for those parts, I basically leaned on builders that I know personally or that I discovered here on YouTube. And I mean, there are a ton of really high-end experienced builders that document, tips and share their experiences here on YouTube for free that you can check out. And so definitely encourage you to do that. But I say all that if this is something you've never done before, to encourage you that I think you can do it with all the resources that are out there. But at the same time, that being said, the numbers that I'm about to share with you today, they are my numbers. And again, I'm not a licensed GC. So I had to go out and find all the different trades and bid, that whole process. And it's a very arduous process, especially to find the ones that are really highly skilled and are going to get the job done right in the end. So I say all that as some of my numbers might be higher than average, some of them might be lower. I mean, you may be a general contractor watching this, or at least have more experience than I do, and so you may look at some of my numbers and think, man, you way overpaid on that particular trade. And so I just say that to remind you that I'm just a homeowner, but I think in the end my costs turned out pretty decent overall, especially considering the level of finishes and some of the architectural details that I was trying to pursue in this project. And third, last disclaimer is I built this barn a little over 5 years ago, and obviously there's been some inflation of recent, and so you may need to adjust my numbers a little bit. In fact, when I'm done going through all of them, I'll take the final number and adjust it for you with the basic CPI calculator that's available online. I think it's through the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. So I'll do that at the very end of the video, but still just something to factor in. You may need to adjust some of the numbers based on today's inflation. So with that, I've got a spreadsheet here that I'll be referring to for the rest of the video, and I'll put these numbers up, of course, and I'll also try to throw up some photos that pertain to some of these different line items here. Most of these, by the way, are going to be in order. There's a few that aren't quite. The first category you can see is site prep, and so I've got permits, all the permits for the septic, for just the building permit at large, then the soil report. Anytime you disturb soil, you've got to get a report for that permit. Erosion control, your silt fence and everything going around the build zone, then tree removal. I had a lot of really large oak trees back here before that I had to have removed, and all the roots pulled out and everything. And then that initial grading, all right, so that total site prep came to just over $7,000, $7,150. And by the way, some of these numbers I kind of rounded a little bit just to make it easier for presentation. For the foundation and slab, you can see there the footings and subwall, $17,000. That was a big line item. And basically where I am here in Georgia, my property is very sloped. So I had to spend a lot of money on getting the site prepped and ready. So I've got a foundation subwall that I think in the very back corner is almost 12 feet tall, over a foot thick, rebar and everything. It was a very expensive subwall. Had to have that then backfilled, of course, compacted to make sure that it was ready for the slab. So another $4,000 there. And then the monolithic slab itself, all concrete. Again, that was kind of a commercial grade slab with the weight and everything that I'm putting on it. That was another $15,000, and then had to pay a little bit in engineering there. So total foundation and slab was just over $36,000 there. Then for septic, I did not connect the bathroom to county sewer. We don't have that here, and so I had to have another septic tank just dedicated to the barn. So that was $3,100. And then moving on to the framing section, the plans I did all myself. And in fact, if you didn't catch my first tour video on the barn, if you're interested in buying those drawings and plans, I'll put a link in the description below. But I did do all those plans myself. It took a lot of time to put all that into AutoCAD. So I saved a little bit there. Then on the lumber itself, the 2x4s, the sheathing, everything else for the framing, that was $15,000 raw. And then for the labor, I did hire some carpenters. That was $7,400. The air sealing, the zip tape, instead of doing house wrap, I did the zip panels, so I had to seal all that. I did that myself. Spent on materials just over $250 approximately. Then the cupola that's on the very top of the barn, I built that myself, so no labor, but still was about $200 in materials. I did have to pay an engineer to kind of authenticate a few different aspects of the barn build to satisfy the county, and so that was $600. And then the termite treatment, this is something that a lot of people overlook, but when you're building, it's a great idea to go ahead and get everything treated for termites, so that all that wood that's exposed can be treated ahead of time before it's sealed up. So that was $500. So total framing was $23,950. Then for the roof, the main roof was a Galvalume roof, pretty basic, pretty simple, $6,000. And then the cupola roof all the way up top is copper, so $1,000 for that tiny little roof up there. But it looks great. It's been aging very nicely. Then the gutters were $1,500, so total roof $8,500. Then the exterior cladding, so the hardy plank, all the trim, everything's cementatious. That was $4,400 for the whole barn, and then I did pay some carpenters to do all that for me. That was $4,300, so $8,700 total for the exterior cladding. For the doors and windows, the materials, I did some pretty nice architectural wood windows with SDLs and everything, so that came to a total of $8,000. Then the garage door behind me, you can see it's a larger 10x10 garage door, custom and everything, so that was $3,000. The flashing I did myself, so no labor on that, but the labor for everything else there was $1,400, leaving a total of just $12,400 for the doors and windows. For the electrical, I had to pay our local utility company about $1,800 to put a new transformer because the barn was too far away from my existing transformer that feeds the house. And so I had to have another transformer put out here, and that was really a bargain, by the way. They charged $1,800. They had to trench, I think 4 or 5 feet deep for a very long stretch. And so they do that basically because they know they're gonna have you a customer for life. Then on the rough end for the electrical, that was $4,400 done by a licensed electrician. I actually ended up doing the finished electrical myself to save on the labor. And so after the rough end was complete, I said, okay, I'll take it from here and do all the finish. So no cost there. I did still have to pay for fixtures. And so that was $1,200 that I spent. And then all the low voltage, I also did myself, but I did have to buy all the components, and that was about $800. So $8,200 total on the electrical. Then on the plumbing, also again, paid a licensed plumber. The rough end was $4,400. Then the finished plumbing was $3,300, and the fixtures that I bought were $800 for between the bathroom and the kitchen there. So total plumbing, $8,500. For the HVAC, for the heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, this was all inclusive, from the rough end to the finished product there. That was $9,000 for a pretty decent system. For the insulation, I opted for spray foam, and so that was $5,800. In fact, if I remember right, if I had opted for just conventional fiberglass bats, I think it would have been about half that cost. Then moving along to the finishing, I did hire a drywall subcontractor, and so that was $7,400 to do all the drywall hanging and finishing there. The interior doors and trim, I did all that finishing myself, but I did still have to pay for the materials, so that was $2,800. I did also hire a painter to do everything inside and outside. That was $6,300 labor and materials. Then the cabinetry, I also did that myself. That was $5,100 though for the cabinets. I did some pretty nice cabinets in the bathroom and the kitchenette. And then of course did have to pay for the countertops as well. Those were quartz, and that was $2,400. Then the flooring and the tile, I did all that myself, and the materials were approximately $800 on that. So total finishing, $24,800. And I think I did some pretty decent finishes considering all things. So if you didn't want to finish it out as nicely inside, you could definitely save some money there. And then the last section you can see there is the hardscaping and the landscaping. This is a section where, depending on how far you want to go with your project, some of these numbers may not apply to you. But you can see the first one, the final grade, getting everything pitched so that it drains properly, that was $800. Then I kind of splurged on a retaining wall. I've got this nice decorative retaining wall out here in front of the barn that's holding back a lot of dirt, and you can see it's a real nice dry stack. Looks beautiful, you know, everything was hand laid, chiseled. That was a splurge at $9,000. Then I did some miscellaneous plantings to kind of tie everything together nicely with the house and the barn. That was $4,000. And then I really splurged on this one. You can see $13,000 for a concrete driveway. You know, I think it was 4 full concrete trucks that it took to pour all this driveway. But basically, I had a driveway already leading from the public roadway to my house, and I decided to carry that driveway all the way back to the barn further. And it's a very large area right here for turning around. And so that was $13,000. I mean, obviously you can save if you just lay gravel down. I will say it is nice having the concrete though, especially maneuvering the fifth wheel when it's raining outside. So the total hardscaping and landscaping came then to $26,800. Okay, so if we add up all those subcategories that I just went through, you can see we get to a total build cost of just over $183,000. And I was fairly pleased with that number in the end. If you take the square footage of this building, approximately 1,800 square feet, and divide it by that, you know, it's roughly about $100 per square foot. And I thought for the finishes and all the architectural details that I did, I thought that was a pretty good number to settle on. However, like I said earlier in the video, I did serve as the GC, and so I saved a little bit potentially there. And then I also did some of the labor myself throughout the project. So I wanted to factor those numbers in just in case maybe you don't want to be as hands-on on your project. So for the GC, depending on your GC, I think averages between 10 and 20% of the total build cost is what your GC is going to charge to you ultimately. So let's just take a modest 12% in this case. So 12% of that 183 comes to just under $22,000. You can see $21,972. So that would be about what I saved by serving as the GC myself, hopefully. And then, like I said, I did some of the labor myself on different parts of the project. And I just kind of ballparked on that one overall. When I was going through all those numbers, by the way, the ones that were shaded in gray with self, those were the ones where I did the labor. And I estimate throughout the course of the whole project from start to finish, that was probably about $15,000 potentially that I saved in labor. So if we add those numbers, the GC savings and the labor savings, back into the total project cost, you can see that comes to just over $220,000. But like I said earlier in the video, I built this 5 years ago, and so there's been some inflation, obviously. So if you take that number and then adjust it based on today's inflation, that number comes out to $273,448. So that kind of gives you an idea of perhaps what it would cost from start to finish in today's market. Again, depending on when you're watching this video though, you may need to go back to that 220 and adjust that based on whatever the inflation is when you're watching this video. Okay, so I hope sharing those numbers is helpful. I will add that I think it's really fun to build something from scratch, you know, especially something that's purpose-built, where you've designed it to function in a certain way, specific to your needs. I mean, some might look at what I built and think, you know, why in the world did he do that? Why didn't he do this detail instead? And yet there might be others that want to clone it verbatim. But I just think when you get to use a purpose-built building that you've built, you know, on a day-to-day basis, it's just very rewarding. And I just really consider myself blessed to have been able to have that experience to build the barn and get to enjoy it. On that note, if you didn't see my original tour of the barn, or you'd like to purchase drawings and plans for my barn, I will put links in the description below. So I appreciate you using those to support the channel. Definitely drop me a comment if you have any questions or feedback. And as always, thanks for watching.